What happens when one frustrated comment about referees doesn't just get you a slap on the wrist, but sparks a war with the entire league? Well, Sophie Cunningham just found out, and the fallout has fans questioning whether the WNBA is hiding something much bigger. Picture this: you're watching your favorite team. The refs blow another call, blatant, obvious, right in front of everyone. You grumble to your friends, maybe fire off a tweet, but imagine if that little outburst cost you thousands of dollars and suddenly put you in the crosshairs of league officials. That's not a what if. That's exactly what just happened to Sophie Cunningham. It all started so small. Sophie had enough of what she saw as terrible officiating. Missed calls, questionable decisions, the kind of stuff fans complain about daily. So she did what millions of us do: she posted on TikTok. But unlike us, she didn't sugarcoat it. She called the refs exactly what she thought they were: useless. 6 letters. That's all it took. And those 6 letters lit the fuse. Within hours, the WNBA slapped her with a $500 fine. Fans were stunned. Players were whispering. Was this really about protecting the refs, or was it about silencing a player who dared to speak out? Now, most players would have taken the hit, apologized, and quietly moved on. But Sophie Cunningham, she's not built that way. Instead of backing down, she doubled down. On her podcast, she didn't just defend her TikTok, she pulled back the curtain on something the league desperately wanted buried: years of frustration from players over terrible officiating. A problem that had been simmering in silence. The league's response: swift, harsh, and honestly, kind of shocking. Another fine, this time $1,500. That brought Sophie's total to a staggering $2,000 just for speaking her mind. But here's where things get interesting. Instead of shutting Sophie up, those fines turned her into something bigger: a symbol, a martyr for every fan who's ever screamed at a TV over a bad call. Overnight, social media exploded. Hashtags flooded timelines. Fans weren't just angry at the fines, they were angry at the double standard. Because while Sophie was getting punished for words, other players like Caitlin Clark had been taking brutal hits on the court for 2 whole seasons, without a single fine for the offenders. That hypocrisy was impossible to ignore. And the fans, they weren't having it. Within hours, GoFundMe campaigns popped up to pay off Sophie's fines, and they hit their goals almost instantly. It didn't stop with hashtags. Petitions demanding better officiating and transparency started spreading like wildfire, thousands of signatures pouring in within hours. And the questions fans were asking, they were simple but devastating for the league. Why punish a player for saying what everyone can see? Why silence the truth instead of fixing the problem? The WNBA had accidentally created exactly what they were trying to prevent: not a quiet reprimand, but a movement. And to really understand just how explosive this is, you've got to see how the WNBA handles things compared to other leagues. Think about the NBA. Outspoken players like Draymond Green, they've built entire brands on being brutally honest. Charles Barkley, he became a cultural icon not just for his game, but for saying whatever was on his mind. No filter, no apologies. And fans don't just accept it, they love it. It's part of basketball's DNA. But Sophie Cunningham's experience, it tells a very different story. After calling out refs for failing to protect players, especially stars like Caitlin Clark, Sophie got more than fines. A league official actually pulled her aside, in front of her teammates, and whispered a chilling warning: they're going to fine you again. That wasn't a warning, it was a threat. A reminder that in the WNBA, free speech comes with a price tag. And here's the kicker: by trying to shut her down, the league only turned up her volume. It's the classic Streisand effect. The harder you try to bury something, the louder it gets. Sophie's punishment didn't silence her, it amplified her message. Fans who might have missed her first comments now couldn't ignore the story. And suddenly the spotlight was burning even brighter on the WNBA's officiating problem. The irony gets even uglier when you stack it against recent controversies. For 2 years, fans have watched Caitlin Clark take brutal, dangerous hits, blindsides, elbows, cheap shots, that would get players ejected in the NBA. Yet most of those incidents, no real consequences. Take Marina Mabrey's vicious blindside, or DJ Carrington's wild swipe that nearly hit Clark in the eye. Moments that could have ended a career, and the league just looked the other way. But when Sophie Cunningham simply points out that refs aren't doing their jobs, suddenly the WNBA finds its backbone and comes down hard. It feels backwards, like ignoring a house fire while obsessing over someone not using a coaster. And when you zoom out, a pattern starts to emerge, and it's not a flattering one for the league. Have you ever walked out of a WNBA game with that uneasy feeling, like something just wasn't right? Like the game wasn't decided by the players on the court, but by the refs holding the whistle? That's the frustration Sophie Cunningham brought straight into the spotlight. Now, to be fair, she's the first to admit refereeing is hard. Split-second decisions, constant movement, high stakes. But her real concern, and the reason this blew up, isn't about a few missed calls, it's about a pattern. A deeper systemic problem that has been haunting the league for years. This isn't just about points left on the scoreboard. It's about entire game strategies being thrown off. It's about fans in the stands boiling with anger. And it's about players walking off the court after yet another game, biting their tongues because they know speaking out comes with a price. And if you want proof, look no further than the recent incidents involving Caitlin Clark. Star players, the faces of the league, getting hacked, shoved blindsided, and not a single whistle blown. Fans scream in arenas, social media explodes with questions, and the same frustration keeps echoing everywhere. Why are these fouls ignored? Why does the league turn a blind eye? What's really going on with the refs? But instead of answering those questions, what does the WNBA do? They fine the players who dare to ask them out loud. That first $500 fine against Sophie Cunningham wasn't just money, it was gasoline on a fire the league clearly hoped to smother. And instead of calming anyone down, it turned Sophie into a lightning rod. Her fight wasn't just her fight anymore, it became a rallying cry, a voice for every fan, every rookie, every veteran who's been quietly frustrated with the state of officiating in women's basketball. And when you compare the WNBA's approach to other leagues, the difference is night and day. Look at the NFL. They've had their own disasters. Remember that infamous 2019 Saints no-call, a game-changing blunder. But here's the thing, in the NFL, referees are treated like professionals who can be questioned, scrutinized, even criticized by fans, players, and media alike. And guess what? That openness builds trust. Sure, mistakes happen, but people know they'll be talked about, debated, and held accountable. The WNBA, they seem to be going in the opposite direction. Less transparency, more punishment, less dialogue, more discipline. And here's the scary part. Research shows bad officiating doesn't just change a game, it eats away at trust in the league itself. And if trust is gone, what happens to the WNBA next? Here's where things get dangerous, not just for Sophie, but for the entire league. When fans start doubting the fairness of the game itself, the WNBA's credibility takes a hit that no marketing campaign can fix. Players see what happened to Sophie and suddenly grow hesitant to speak up. Fines and penalties hang over their heads like a warning sign. Stay quiet or pay the price. And that silence, it only breeds more mistrust. It's a vicious cycle, one that could drive away the very players and fans the league needs to survive. What makes Sophie's situation almost surreal is how absurd the whole thing became. She wasn't just fined once, she was fined for talking about her fines. That's not discipline, that's straight out of a Kafka novel. Sophie even revealed on her podcast that her own general manager had to pull her aside, in front of her entire team, to deliver the news of yet another penalty. Humiliating. And the message couldn't have been clearer. No matter how respectfully you speak, the league will come down on you if you break their silence. The irony. Sophie never claimed all refs were bad. She openly said some were skilled, and that their job is incredibly tough. But that nuance didn't matter. The punishment machine still came for her, and that exposes the bigger truth. If officiating were consistent and fair, players wouldn't feel the need to go public in the first place. Sophie's criticism should have been a wake-up call. Instead, the league ignored the message and doubled down on punishment. A simple complaint was turned into something much bigger, a battle about free speech, accountability, and the limits of league power. And the timing couldn't have been worse. Just as the Wall Street Journal published an opinion piece raising questions about possible civil rights violations against Caitlin Clark, the WNBA suddenly found itself under a harsh microscope. Media outlets began asking the hard questions. Does the WNBA foster a hostile environment where players are afraid to speak up about legitimate concerns? Fans didn't just rant on Twitter, they mobilized. They raised money to cover Sophie's fines. They signed petitions demanding reform. They called out the glaring disconnect between what the league claims to value, empowerment, authenticity, inclusion, and what it actually enforces: silence. And that's the heart of it. This isn't just about one player or one fine, it's about leadership that seems more interested in controlling the narrative than fixing the problems that are pushing fans and players away. When a league punishes honest words more harshly than dangerous actions on the court, you have to ask, what are the priorities here? Because Sophie Cunningham's criticism wasn't disrespectful. She didn't curse, didn't attack anyone personally. She just spoke a simple truth that echoed what countless fans were already thinking. And instead of listening, the WNBA tried to silence her, risking the very connection with fans that makes a sport worth watching. Think about it. Leagues like the NBA thrive because outspoken personalities are celebrated. Players are encouraged to challenge norms, speak their truth, and bring raw energy to the game. That's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it memorable. But the WNBA, their seen but not heard approach, risks turning the league into something bland and forgettable, the exact opposite of what a growing sport needs. Sophie Cunningham's podcast is proof of that. It gives fans a rare, unfiltered look into what players actually think and feel. That kind of authenticity should be gold for the league. Instead, every time she raises legitimate concerns, they hit her with another penalty. The message couldn't be clearer. No criticism, no matter how fair, how respectful, or how constructive, will be tolerated. And that creates a dangerous environment where problems don't get solved. They just fester in silence, until they finally explode. This is exactly why the WNBA continues to struggle for mainstream respect. Because when leadership spends more energy policing players' words than fixing the product on the court, growth becomes nearly impossible. Here's the truth: when the games are well officiated and fair, players don't need to complain. But when officiating is this inconsistent, no amount of fines or intimidation can stop the truth from coming out. What started as one frustrated TikTok has now snowballed into something much bigger. Sophie Cunningham's story isn't just about missed calls anymore. It's a symbol of a leadership crisis, a league that values image control over real solutions. And until that changes, controversies like this aren't just possible, they're inevitable. So the question now isn't if the WNBA will face more criticism, it's whether they'll finally choose to listen, instead of silencing voices with fines and threats. Because make no mistake, the basketball world is watching, and the league's next move will decide everything, whether this becomes the spark for real, positive change, or just another chapter in a story of missed opportunities. Sophie Cunningham may have started this with a simple TikTok video, but in doing so, she may have lit the fuse on something that could reshape women's basketball forever.